Well, hello and welcome to this week's episode of Real Hope Conversations. I'm your host, Abby McFarlane, and this week we are in for a great conversation. Not only is the topic meaty and probably difficult, we're chatting about opinion and disagreement, which I know if you're like me, I go, when I'm talking about that. But we're also sitting down with Sam Fagan, who is more than just a pastor. He's also my brother. So you're getting a little bit of an insight into a sibling conversation about a difficult topic. So it could go anywhere. Sam, I'm excited to be sitting down opposite you because we don't usually talk about this stuff when we're catching up as brother and sister.
No, we don't, Abs. Can I call you Abs on your podcast?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah. Nicknames, they're okay today. It's lovely to be here with you. Thanks for having me and excited to talk about this topic. I guess often we surface around conversations with the kids, your French terrier, and family dynamics and all the things that are going on. But this is a cool opportunity to dive into, I think, an important topic. So you gave me a prickly one as well. Opinion and disagreement.
Isn't that what siblings are supposed to do? Throw you in the deep end?
Throw me under the bus.
See what happens?
Thank you.
So many people, I know you, but so many people don't know you. They may have read your devotion in the Real Hope devotional. But can you share a little bit about you, who you are?
Well, I'm your younger brother.
Yes, you are.
You're my older sister, my senior. And I grew up in Borkham Hills. And I'm a Borco boy, born and bred. And grew up in church out there. Grew up playing soccer. I was a pretty normal kid by all measures. Loved sport, loved running around with my mates on weekends, loved catching the train to Circular Quay and then the ferry to Manly and then bodyboarding all afternoon. Grew up in youth ministry, as I said, and youth ministry really had a profound effect on my life and played a really important role, I think, which we've spoken about before in terms of our family dynamics, the mentors and the influence and just the people that I came into contact with in that youth environment really did help me and encourage me and became a bit of a safe place during those teenage years, which can be difficult, can be confusing, lots of questions. And so that's what I discovered in youth ministry. I guess that was also probably the time where I realized that with my life, I had a dream to build the church and help people connect with God, and knew that I wanted to do that some way, somehow. And so, that dream kind of sparked when I was a teenager and finished school, didn't really know what to do. I started serving in youth, but in terms of my future, I guess I was still a little bit insecure about those dreams. And so it took me a few years before I was ready to accept that I wanted to, and I needed to go to Bible college and get some training and learn how to do it, learn how to do ministry, get equipped. And so I did Bible college for 3 years, and it was transformative. It gave me confidence to believe in those dreams, that I wanted to be a pastor, I wanted to help people, I wanted to preach and communicate. And then I became a youth pastor pretty soon after. Moved to Sydney City. Yeah. And was a youth pastor for many, many years, right in the heart of Sydney. And it was a really amazing experience. Some of my best years yet were in there, and stories and people. And it's just a really cool experience being a youth pastor in a city like Sydney that's so diverse and very multicultural, people from all over the place coming and going. And so that was great. And then I have been overseeing a campus for the last 5 years, and pretty much have done 12 years of full-time pastoral ministry, which has been a real joy and a learning experience, obviously, and has grown me, stretched me, and also put me in contact with so many different types of people, which is, in my opinion, the most beautiful part of the job.
Yeah.
Is the people that you get to converse with and do life with. And so that's been amazing. Amongst other things, I'm also a Man United tragic.
Yeah.
Our team is horrible
Which you shared
this
with
year.
your nephew, who is also a Manchester United tragic.
Uncle Judy's is to pass on that passion.
Yeah.
And I hope for his sake that we turn things around. I love surfing, love traveling. I'm married to Cheryl, who is from Sacramento, California. Shout out Sacktown. What? And
she's amazing.
She is amazing. We've been married for 7 years, and she is a full-time accredited sexologist. So I'm a pastor and she's a sexologist. So people find that as an interesting mix. That's an interesting
intersection right there of faith and culture, which is what we're trying to talk about today. So you're living that out on a day-to-day basis.
Opinion and disagreements. Yes. So it's been such a joy, and we've been on a really amazing journey together.
Yeah.
And we live in Sydney. We love it. Sydney's an amazing city to live in and occupy, and it's a bit about me.
So as a sister, it's awesome to hear you share about your journey, because it's been interesting to watch that for you guys. But even so, just hearing you talk about the people and that being the heart of your ministry, that's really the heart of this podcast, is that we're journeying with people. And I think that that's certainly what I've seen as you've been ministering and serving in ministry, is journeying with people as we're walking through the seasons of faith and of living out our faith in a world that can sometimes seem oppositional to who we are and what we believe, in a world that is, let's be honest, in the last 2 years, a little crazy and a little hectic. For you, as we're talking about this topic, opinion and disagreement, what is your take on where opinion and disagreement is sitting within the world right now, and within culture?
Wow. Well, I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to know that the world is very opinionated.
Yeah.
That there is a lot of disagreement, a lot of divide, and I think that's caused a lot of pain and a lot of heartache and a lot of hurt for people. I look at the world and see the headlines, see the images on social media and the news, as we all do. Mindful right now of the events taking place in Ukraine, and heart breaks for the people over there and those affected, the vulnerable. It's really tragic, and I think the world is very opinionated, very divided, very disagreed. And does that make sense? Disagreed?
Yeah, it does. Yeah? I think that that's a really good description of because there's lots of disagreements, and we're all disagreed on something.
On all fronts, there is disagreement when it comes to politics. There's disagreement when it comes to education. There's disagreement when it comes to sexuality. There's disagreement when it comes to religion. On all fronts, there is opinion and disagreement and hurt and offense, which is why I think it's such an important topic for us to discuss, because I think within that current state of affairs and the landscape of the world and society, there is a really profound opportunity for Christians to hold that space and show up in a different way amidst all of that disagreement and all of the opinions that are out there.
So as you're saying that, I'm like, 100%. We should show up and we should hold that space. But there is a big part of me that is, I want to run away from that space, because heading into that space takes courage and bravery, but you're probably heading into a space where you are going to get not smacked down, but you are going to face opposition, and nobody really wants to face opposition. As we as Christians live our lives in a culture that is full of opinion and disagreement, how do we hold that space? Like, How do we approach it?
Yeah, great question, Abby. And does anybody have the answer out there? I'm not sure. How do we hold that space? Well, actually, what came to mind when you were saying that is yeah, like I first thought of social media and Twitter, and you think of the disagreements that show up in the comment threads, and it's so explosive. It's so direct. The whole idea of cancel culture that has been, lingering for years now, and it's just people are kind of scared to put their thoughts and feelings out there at times, and or to comment on something or offer a perspective, because you just don't know what you're going to get back. But I also think maybe food for thought is that the goal of conversation, or the goal of any of these discussions around an important topic, I think for Christians, the goal is not to win the argument. And so we first have to probably start with a bit of introspection and considering, okay, what's my motive in this? If the goal is to win the argument, or to prove that I am the smartest person in the room, or to prove that I'm right and they're wrong, I probably think we're not fostering the right kind of dialogue or conversation. That ultimately is not going to end well for one of those parties. But I guess my approach, and I'm learning as well, but my approach has definitely been to go in or to engage with these difficult conversations from a place of wanting to learn and being curious and asking questions. And knowing that I'm actually not an expert on the topics, and to pretend like I am is really a miss or a fault, because we all have so much to learn. And so what I've tried to do is to take the position or the posture of being open, being curious, wanting to learn, wanting to lean into the humanity of the other person, as opposed to trying to win an argument and trying to prove that my perspective or my value or my belief is superior to yours. And I think when our aim or our goal is that kind of connection, is something relational rather than argumentative, that we're possibly on the right track.
So we live in a family that is highly opinionated.
Are we?
Yeah. I think that our family would even admit that we're highly opinionated. And I think that we need to point out that it's not just out there in the world where we're going to have opinion and disagreement. It's within family. It's within our Christian family. It's within churches. It's within Bible study groups. It's within friendship groups. We're going to have opinion and disagreement. And I think that it's easier to have opinion and disagreement in family, right? Because we know that we love each other and it's a safe place. And at the end of the day, you're still my brother and nothing's going to change that. And I'm still your sister and you know that I love you. So I think that it's easier to have those conversations where you do disagree. I think maybe it's having conversations with people that you aren't so connected with, like you said, but it is on relationship. I think that that's a really important point that you made, is that it's about approaching it from connection and relationship and the humanity, seeing the humanity of somebody, that no matter who they are, whether they believe in God, whether they have a faith, whether they have an understanding, that they were still created in the image of God and they are still valuable to Him, and they still deserve respect and they still deserve to be seen. And we don't know the background or the history that they are also carrying into the conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's so essential, right? And look, if we go back to as well, one of the foundational beliefs that the Christian worldview holds is that men and women are made in the image of God. And if we take that as a starting point to these conversations, these opinions, these disagreements, if that is our foundational value or our foundational understanding that we're all made in the image of God, every single person, that no one is any more valuable, that reframes the critique, that reframes the tone, that reframes the language, that reframes what I'm trying to get out of this, what I'm trying to achieve with this conversation. And I think that is the lens at which we need to approach all manner of conversations, is that the person on the other side that's sitting across the room from me is made in the image of God just like me. There is an inherent value, that there is an eternal worth that is upon their life despite their politics, despite their sexual orientation, despite their religious beliefs. God looks at them and sees that they are of immeasurable worth. And I think when we come from that place, that it changes everything about the relationship and about the conversation. I think when I was putting together the devotional for...
Good segue, Sam. Good segue.
Yeah, see that? That was very smooth. One of the references that I had in mind was Howard Thurman. And I have recently finished his book, Jesus and the Disinherited. And it is a beautiful read. It's challenging. He is obviously speaking from his context and the context within America and civil rights movement. And he was a really key player in that. And he wrote this book. And towards the end of the book, he's talking about Zacchaeus. And he mentions Zacchaeus and says that Jesus' approach with Zacchaeus was not to tell him that he was a sinner or wrong, but was actually to reveal the value and reveal the worth that is on the inside. And if you reveal the worth and the insight that's on the inside, then what happens to Zacchaeus is that he attacks his own betrayal from the inside out. And I think that this is a profound insight into how we can approach one another, in that the goal is not to point out behavioral things that we don't agree with. The goal shouldn't be to critique lifestyle or people's preferences or tastes. The goal is to reveal their worth and their value to God. And if we can reveal that, man, they'll take care of their lifestyle, their behavior, the things that aren't right. If they know their worth in God's eyes, I think that empowers people to make the kind of change and transformation that God is willing them to make.
Yeah. That is such a profound thought. But I think that it's an important one for people to think through. And I know that I'm going to be thinking it through as I leave this conversation. But I think it also speaks to what you talked about in the devotional about Paul, and in Acts 17, how he's walking through the streets of Athens and he sees this religious altar which says to an unknown God, and rather than choosing to be inflamed and hot-headed, and he actually decides to immerse himself in that culture and approach it from a position of understanding. Do you want to unpack that a little bit for us? Yeah.
What a cool story, right?
Yeah.
And talking about agreement and opinion, here's Paul walking into Athens, and he sees this artifact, this monument to an unknown God. And I think some within religious circles would probably think, that the right thing to do in that moment is to rebuke, call heresy. That, oh man, isn't that sinful? That's idolatry, right? That they would set up this statue to an unknown God. Like, what's going on within this culture and within these people? And yet Paul didn't do any of that. And that's why I find this story so fascinating and so helpful for us. Given our current context, the world is just a mess. Rather than walking in and pointing at the monuments to unknown gods within our culture, Paul sees the opportunity to use that to connect them to the truth about the living God, Creator God, Father God, and what that can mean for them. And so I find this story really inspiring when it comes to the culture that we're a part of. And as I wrote in the devotion, I think often, there can be a bit of fear around culture.
Yeah.
And around things that maybe are different to my culture, the things that I grew up with. But culture is just the ideas or the behavior expressed by certain people or groups. And so, often there can be a bit of hesitation to other types of culture. And yet I think it is a beautiful window into the human soul, into someone else, into their life, their story. And if we approach it like Paul, there is an opportunity to connect that with God and make sense of it for the person, for the individual.
Yeah. Because at the heart of it, we're created for fellowship. We're created for connection. We're created for relationship. And we're called to relationship with one another and with people. But it has to be from a place of understanding and trying. Curiosity, like you said, understanding and curiosity to lead to revealing the love and the worth that God has for them, as opposed to, I think, in history it has been the fire and brimstone kind of approach, whereas this is the way for us, I guess, to approach in truth and love. Yeah. So for you, there are people who are listening who are probably going, there's a stack of what you just said that I really resonate with, but I'm not sure how I can. I'm still fearful of these conversations. I'm still fearful of living in a culture where opinion and disagreement really does reign supreme a lot of the time. We as you said, we see it on social media every day. We see it on the news every day. We see conversation and opinion pieces everywhere. What's your encouragement? I should rephrase. What's your encouragement for people who want to hold that space?
Yeah.
But still are sitting with an uncertainty or uncomfortable fear.
Yeah, totally. Well, look, I would start by saying, hey, it's normal to have those kind of emotions and those feelings. Like, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. Being nervous or hesitant, I think is just natural, normal, part of our human wiring. Anything that's different or that we don't understand, that's the emotional response is to feel a little bit uncomfortable or unsure about how to go about things. And so firstly, it's okay. And just to normalize those emotions, but then to understand from a Christian perspective that people are the thing that is most valuable to God, and so that should also reflect in our lives, and that you and I are on mission to connect with people. We're on mission to love people, to connect with them, to relate to them, to have profound experiences with one another, godlike experiences with one another. And so I think that also should foster into, hey, I feel a little bit uncomfortable, or I don't quite understand them, but I know that God loves them, and there is this value on them, and that I'm here on earth to connect and to serve and to love. And so I'm going to take an approach of being curious and asking questions and wanting to learn. And I'm not sure I have this topic all figured out, and yet I'm just going to lean in and ask questions and see if I can understand where they're coming from and how we can connect. And one of the things that has been really helpful to me as well is something that a German theologian said in the 17th century. And this has really helped me over the last couple of years. And the guy's name was Rupertus Meldenius.
Jeez.
And
that sounds like something from like a movie, doesn't it?
What kind of movie, Abby?
I'm going to say it.
A rom-com?
No,
your
not a
favorite
rom-com.
genre?
That is my favorite genre. It sounds like something from like Harry Potter. Like something from, I don't know, it's like Dumbledore.
It is very, very Dumbledore-ish.
Yes.
But Rupertus Meldenius was a German theologian, 17th century, and he was alive during the time of what history records as the 30-Year War, which started as Catholics and Protestants against each other. Horrible, right? And then kind of spread to wider parts of Europe.
Yeah.
And over the 30 years, 8 million people died.
Wow.
And so here is this German theologian in the midst of that, public disagreement, that religious discourse, all of the emotions and the fear and the hesitation. And he has this idea: I want to encourage Christians. I want to instill some hope, and I want to reassure them in their faith. And so in those days, there's no social media or anything. And so he decides to write a tract, like a little pamphlet. And he puts this pamphlet together, and within the pamphlet that he began to circulate with Christian communities and churches, there is this phrase that stuck, that really resonated with people and has been quoted so many times. And the phrase is this, and you think about that context that he's speaking into, the context of disagreement, and he says this: hey Christians, hey churches, here's my advice. In essentials, choose unity. In non-essentials, choose freedom. In all things, choose charity or love. And I think for us as believers in a modern day setting, that is a really profound framework for us to operate within.
Yeah.
That when it comes to our opinions or our worldviews, our perspectives, that we would understand, hey, that in essentials, things pertaining to salvation, like our doctrines about salvation and our ways of experiencing God, things that really matter when it comes to salvation, that they're the things that we unify on. They're the things that we build around. They're the things that we agree upon. That with non-essentials, things not pertaining to salvation and our experience of God, that we choose freedom. That I would allow you, my sister, to have your own tastes and your own preferences when it comes to music, when it comes to food, when it comes to things culturally that you appreciate that I don't. Your movie choice, your, what you want to do on the weekend to relax, your political preferences, that I would allow you a degree of freedom, and you would allow me freedom. Freedom to, not freedom to be rogue or freedom to be chaotic, but freedom to outwork that yourself with the Holy Spirit, with a relationship to the Word, in prayer, that I would trust that, hey, Abby's an autonomous Christian, that God has given her discernment, that the Holy Spirit's working in her life. And so in non-essentials, I'm going to extend freedom to her. And I hope that she would extend the same to me, and that we can operate like that when it comes to things that are non-essentials. And then he says, right at the end, in all things, though, we should just love. And that love should be the thing that transcends all of what we're about. That love should be the atmosphere. That love should be what leaves a mark. That love should be the thing that we're remembered for. And maybe that's a question for reflection, is that ultimately, when we walk out of the room after talking about whatever the topic is, do people sense and feel love? Is there a remnant of love that is left in that moment, in that conversation, in that relationship? And I think that's the idea that Rupertus was getting at. In essentials, choose unity. In non-essentials, choose freedom. In all things, choose love.
I think that's the perfect place for us to round this out today, because I think that's giving me pause. And I know that so many people who are watching this or listening will probably be walking away pondering that. I can already see our producer and our videographer processing what Sev's just said. Thank you, my brother. In more ways than one.
My sister, my older sister.
For coming and joining me on this podcast, and for sharing your wisdom and your journey and what you are learning as you are walking through the seasons of life with God. And that's what this whole podcast, this whole devotion is about. And we're not just walking you and I, we're walking you and I. And everybody who is participating in this conversation, whether you're watching it, whether you're listening to it, whether you're reading the devotions, we're all journeying together, and we're learning from one another, and we're sharing our wisdom. We're sharing the things that we have seen God do in our lives, and who He is to us, so that we can refine each other better, and so that we are unified in our walk with God. If you have been encouraged by this conversation like I have, or you have questions, or you have something that you would love to share with the Real Hope team, you can go to the notes or the description underneath this, and it will give you a link to get to the Real Hope team page to share with us your reflections. If you want to get the little ping to let you know that there is a new Real Hope Conversations episode available, don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. But as always, this is about sharing the journey together. So feel free to share this episode on your social media, in messaging, in chats, WhatsApp, your family, friends, church community, maybe friends who don't know God, but this conversation maybe would start a conversation. So we can be starting conversations, not just within our own circles, but with those people who need to have that remnant of love in their life. Well, I hope you have an amazing week, and I am really looking forward to having another Real Hope conversation with you next week.